Thank you very much, everybody, for coming by today. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, for everybody coming out here on this beautiful day, this beautiful morning, to talk about cybersecurity. So hopefully my intentions for this is to share as much information, share some war stories, not scare anybody too bad, but more importantly, kind of talk about the ways that you guys can help yourselves, help your businesses, and help clients. So I want to just deliver as much value as possible there. So got a couple videos. I have an actual presentation, not a presentation, a demo of one of the tools that we built in-house. So I'll demo that. So hopefully it's nice and engaging, but feel free to shout out, ask any questions, any hostile disagreements, those are always welcome as well. So Cyzen, we're the cybersecurity practice for Friedman LLP. So we're backed fully by them. We specialize in compliance services, proactive services revolving around cybersecurity, such as your penetration testing, your application testing. We also are a managed service provider, so we do ongoing monitoring. We deploy sensors that prevent things in real time, and then it's all next generation AV stuff and user behavioral analytics. So we're able to find risks and tackle those in a more proactive fashion. We also do incident response, so a lot of the companies that aren't fortunate to have the prevention in place often get breached. So we help them through that process, through digital forensics, through coordinating what they have to do to keep themselves secure and to prevent that from happening again. So today I'm going to talk about how technology is changing our lives. I'll go in depth about that. I'll talk about some topics, some war stories there. I'll talk about the big headlines as well as some of the smaller ones that you may not have heard of. I'll talk about a bunch of different scary examples, so different real world scenarios that we deal with on a regular basis. We're going to try and educate around that. We're going to talk about who's doing this, like who's doing all the attacking, what kind of trends we're seeing on that front. We'll talk about why they're doing it, whether it be Bitcoin or for somebody's PII, which is a personal identifiable information. We'll also talk about what they want. We'll talk about how they're doing it, share some examples there, and then I'm going to talk about some technology and some remediation things that you can do to implement in your endeavors, and then some best practices and Q&A. So our lives and technology is changing. So I think everybody, we're pretty much cyborgs at this point. Whether you have, your phone, which is a computer now that everybody walks around with in their pocket, and right down to smartwatches. Thank God Google Glass didn't really catch on, because I don't know if I had enough ports to charge 3 devices at night. But you have everything integrated from smart thermostats to lights. I have lights that are Wi-Fi enabled now that you can control through your phone in your house. We've seen smart refrigerators. We have smart cars now that drive on their own and have all sorts of other technology things kind of baked in for convenience and to improve our lives. There's a lot of different cloud services out there. There's constant pressure for organizations to move to the cloud and to have their data accessible, throughout their organization and anywhere else in the world. We're seeing a lot of different advances in machine learning, artificial intelligence, right down to like the products that we use. You might not even know it, but you have things like Alexa, which it uses different learning algorithms on the back end. And these are different ways that we're being targeted more, and our data is being collected more, and things are being catered to being able to sell us stuff or course our view on certain items and things on the internet. Healthcare and biometrics, it's crazy now to think that this device has facial recognition on it, and you have the biometrics for your fingerprints as well. So those are changing the way that healthcare systems work, as well as different convenience and authentication. There's blending lines between personal devices and business devices. So show of hands, how many people have their work email and their personal email on their phone? Oh, I do. Pretty much everybody does. So we're seeing a lot of overlap between the information that's out there for somebody in their personal lives, as well as the information that can be used to attack them at their organization. We have digital currencies. It's kind of crazy to think about that there's a global currency that is basically internet money, that has a pretty good value. I think last I checked, it's around $8,000 for a Bitcoin right now, give or take. We saw it go up to 20 a while ago, but that's a whole other story. Just being able to kind of adapt to the blockchain and having that potentially change people's lives and impact people, whether you're bullish or bearish on that. There's definitely a good grounds to have many good conversations. We can do totally different presentations just on that alone. Then services that utilize tech, like think about like Uber, for example, right? Like if you would have went back in the past and you said, all right, you're gonna order a taxi from your phone and it's gonna come pick up and drive your daughter to school, like people would be like, are you out of your mind? That's crazy, but yet that's the new norm that's totally acceptable in today's day and age. Then we have data privacy, which is kind of a growing issue. I know we have a couple lawyers in the room. So data privacy is definitely a hot topic. We're seeing everything from these big companies like Google's, the Amazons, the Facebooks of the world. Their business model is data. So for them, that's their bread and butter. Data is the most valuable thing. It's the most valuable resource, even more than oil nowadays. All the biggest companies are built around data and how they use it and how they interact with their clients and their platforms. So I'm going to show one example right here. This is going to kind of talk about, or it's going to show exactly how convenience of technology can be used to exploit and get somebody. So this is a $110,000 Mercedes here that's sitting in somebody's driveway. So back in the day, if you wanted to jack somebody's car, you'd either have to have a gun, put it to their head, or you have to figure out, pull apart the dash and hotwire it, which is a whole process, which kind of kept people from doing it. People still did it, but now you can see these criminals are going up, and they have what's called a repeater. So they're looking for the signal inside the house for the keyless entry. And what they're doing is they're broadcasting that, and the guy's standing next to it with the other car, so he unlocked the car through the keyless entry. And he's able to just go right into the car as if the key was right next to it and he had the key. And then he realizes he gets in the car and he's like, I can't start the car. So he has to go back and he has to make it so that the key is inside the car again so he can start the engine. So you can see these guys aren't the brightest people, but that's one way that technology can be used to really kind of harm our lives. So. And then keyless entry is one of those things, like everybody's worried about smart cars, people being able to take over control and drive. You have Bluetooth sensors in the tires and the radio. You have the onboard thing where you can call somebody and have the car unlocked. So easy enough, just drives away.
Are we allowed to ask quick questions?
What was that?
So,
yeah, absolutely.
So the keyless entry in the house is actively broadcasting a signal at all times?
So the keyless is always it's always broadcasting a signal. So what people are doing actually to kind of circumvent that from happening, they're putting it in like a metal lockbox, like in the middle of their house. So that was like a small, if it was a small building. So if you're in a bigger house or something like that, and you have your keys upstairs, it's gonna be a lot harder for them to get the signal. Depending on the devices that they're using.
So don't leave your keys by the front
door. Yeah, don't leave your keys by the front door or the garage or anywhere where they could do something like that, or you could just deal with insurance or whatever. I don't know. My car's not worth $110,000, so maybe some of you have cars like that. But. So let's talk about some of the headlines here. Raise your hand if you've ever been involved in a breach that you know of. Okay, I've got a good amount of hands. A lot of people don't even realize that they've been involved. So we have all these different breaches. Some of the big ones are, you have LinkedIn, was a massive one, you have Adobe, you have Dropbox, you have a lot of services that people use that tie into their business life. We also have the Target hack was huge. Google Plus, they had the social network that was just kind of sitting there doing nothing. They got hacked and they're like, screw it, we're just gonna shut it down. Like it doesn't even have that many users, so it was almost like a liability to have all that data and have that hacked. The OPM, so I've had a top secret clearance in my past, so I was involved in that breach. All my information's out there. Equifax, hundreds of millions of people. Yahoo, they couldn't even quantify how bad that breach was. They just basically had to assume that all that information that was stolen is gone. They figured that they exfiltrated all of that info. We have some other ones. So we have some accountants in the room. CCH, which is one of the biggest accounting platforms that people basically run their accounting businesses off of. They had a ransomware attack recently, and they had to go offline 4 days during a busy time of the year. The IRS actually had to add an extension for that just because that breach was so bad. So that's one way that these different breaches are impacting people, whether it's directly their organization or it's an organization that relies on that. So part of what we do is the whole due diligence process. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. third-party diligence is very, very, it's a hot topic right now, whether you're from the legal aspect or the financial aspect. Third-party risk is definitely on everybody's radar, and it's a huge thing because you're only as strong as the weakest link, the people that you deal with and you share your stuff with. We have the ransomware attack on Baltimore City, where that was kind of a hot topic. So there was exploits that were vulnerable through an NSA tool that was leaked a couple years ago, and the city of Baltimore was taken offline. It cost them about 18 million or so for all the damages done. And they tried to blame the NSA for it, and they're saying that, okay, these tools were actually released. These are military-grade weapons that are being used on us, but it's like, hey, you could have patched your systems for 2 years, so I'll get into that in a second. But not updating your systems, that was back and forth. And they just actually found out recently that there was no signs of any of the military-grade weapons, the Eternal Blue that they used for these attacks. So that's kind of a non-issue. So this was just a very vanilla ransomware, and they had really bad security posture. So that was kind of funny to see that come to fruition. Different high net worth individuals. So Mark Zuckerberg, he's been hacked before. We've seen that time and time again. We actually work with a lot of different high net worth individuals that are targets just because of their exposure and how much money they have. And the bigger your digital footprint is, the easier it is for somebody to come after you. So it's not just the big companies that are getting hacked. Not to get political, Donald Daters is one app that I never even heard of, but they had a data leak, and all of their users' information was exposed. So it's a lot of times it's these little ones that we see. I was actually driving down from New York yesterday, and I got this email. So this is just one example of some of the stuff that we're dealing with in real life. It's just a small real estate company. They were going to send out a down payment for a building, which is over $500,000. Somebody was in their email from a typical business email compromise. They didn't have two-factor authentication on their accounts. And what happened was they saw the transactions as they were happening, and he was able to circumvent it and come in and say, hey, can you wire the funds to this account, the offshore account? Couple weeks went by, he's like, hey, you guys got my payment? And they're like, no, we don't have your payment. So that was a big issue, and now he's having to go through the whole rigmarole of dealing with insurance, and it doesn't cover all the stuff, and there's just one example of how that can be incredibly painful. Not just sending out the money, but having to deal with the aftermath and spending all the time of going through something as unfortunate as having some fraudulent money sent out. So Krebs estimates about 88% of successful breaches on companies are 500 employees or lower. So a lot of these aren't just the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, the bigger companies. It's not the Mercks or the Equifaxes. It's the people that are friends and family to us, that are local business owners, that have a substantial amount, but they're not massive. They're not making the news every day. They're targeted, and they're estimating that the average SMB web or small medium business website is scanned by a bot or attacker about 44 times a day. So think about that. When you're putting up a website, you're putting out different marketing collateral. You're growing your digital footprint. That stuff's all being scanned. It's all being kind of automated. So I'll show you something, kind of one good example of that right here. So who wants to hack Google? So I'm just gonna ping google.com. So this should return an IP address. So there's this website online that will actually show. So it shows different, it catalogs everything that's plugged in and that's online. So Google's IP address is 172.217.12.142. So we do a quick search here. And we can see organization, Google, ISP, Google. You could do this for everybody. You could do this for residential. You could see what systems they're working, what ports are open. So sorry to get all technical. But think about ports as, so you have firewalls, they open different ports. Think about it as like you have an apartment building, and that's somebody going around jiggling on the door to see if the door is locked and see what's open. So they have a couple ports open here. You can see some of the services. But that's just one way, there's one other service that's cataloging what you're doing online. You can actually go to that service. They have, actually I'm gonna pull this back up. They have some interesting stuff too. So you can explore. People share different searches. So you have people that have IP cams, so different webcams that are online. You can click right into these. They have net cams, they have default passwords. So say you buy a camera or you buy a wireless router, and it's an older version, has a default credential built into it. You can click here and you can see there's Eclipse Internet gives you statistics on where like all these default credential devices are. You know what country. We have one in the UK, we have one in Thailand, we have one in the US. You can see US is deep red, it's very lit up for having default credentials. You know, password Cisco, and it shows all these different configurations. So that's something that you can do. We have different scanners, we have different tools that do that, but this is a website where you don't even have to install any tools. You can do your open source intelligence and your reconnaissance as an attacker just by having somebody's IP address or their domain name. Technology. So who's doing the attacking? So there's so many different motivations. It's really hard to kind of narrow it down. You know, the biggest one I'd say is crime. There's a ton of attacks that are financially motivated, especially now with having Bitcoin and digital currencies, such as Monero and some others. It makes it an easy way to get paid, and it's pseudo-anonymous, meaning that the attribution, it's really hard to tie somebody to those digital currencies. We've seen the hacktivism, so if anyone's familiar with WikiLeaks, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening with Julian Assange right now where he's going to trial for a lot of the stuff that he did with leaking certain information and being a source, like a news source for leaked information. We've seen a lot of insider threats, so insiders can actually be a malicious user without even knowing it, right? So when somebody's doing something that doesn't conform with some sort of policy at the company, when they're using their Gmail and they're logging in from unsecure locations, when they're sharing their password, writing down their password, like that can be seen as an insider threat. And then there's always the malicious ones that are looking to exit, they're looking to steal clients, steal IP, that sort of thing. We've seen ones where there were coders that were building a platform. They were paying this guy an insane amount of money to basically code the whole thing himself, and he decided he was going to go on his own. And he basically encrypted everything, locked them out of it, and just basically said goodbye. And it was kind of hard to do the forensics on that because the guy kind of knew what he was doing. But that's just one example that an insider can really harm a company. We have espionage. So the espionage, so a good example of that is actually the Uber versus Lyft case. So Uber was actually, they were finding out through Lyft's APIs and their connections who was driving for Uber and Lyft at the same time, and they were prioritizing the different users to give them work over the other ones, but other people that weren't just using Lyft. So they essentially were able to kind of skew that and take some of the market by doing some sort of espionage on the back end on the technical side. We have terrorism, which we do a lot of work for energy plants, so people always want to harm stuff. Denial of service is definitely a big attack in this realm. People want to try and take the grid offline and cause harm that way, whether it be nation state or not. And then we have warfare. So war is no longer fought in the land, sea, and air. It's actually fought behind the keyboard for the most part now. We have countries like North Korea where they're basically pulling kids off the street that have any kind of technical expertise, and they're arming them with keyboard and different exploit kits and things like that so that they can cause harm to other countries. US is not, I'm sorry, go for it.
No. Just when you're done with this slide, I just want to add something to your
Absolutely.
presentation.
Yes, so I mean, US, I mean, we have NSA and we have a bunch of other different organizations that are dedicated to kind of going on the offensive when it comes to warfare.
So what I want to add to this, take notice about nation state. If you're an organization, your leaders feel pretty secure because they bought cyber insurance. Don't necessarily think that everything is covered under cyber insurance. About 3 months ago, there was a lawsuit that a corporation had against a very large insurance company, and to get paid for an incident that they had, for all of the data and everything that they lost, or all to get back the money that they lost, and apparently. Under this contract that they had, they the insurance company won the case because it was nation state.
Yeah.
Nation state is not covered. I forgot the name of the insurance company, but it really did happen back in, I think, March.
I've heard the same thing,
Yeah.
and the article was making headlines. So insurance companies, not all the same. Just because you have insurance for your car doesn't mean you should be driving your Porsche 200 miles an hour everywhere you go. So it's great for things that you have no control over. So insuring third parties, insuring for social engineering and having that coverage. So just in case somebody does click something and it turns into something bad for the company, that you're covered. Because insurance companies are getting a little bit more crafty when it comes to this sort of thing. So fraudulent payments, they're going to look into the weeds. They're going to have forensics performed to see what exactly happened. And they're going to try and argue your claim because it's in their best interest to not pay you out if it's something that's quote unquote not covered. So that's something that legal advice is definitely, it goes a long way when it comes to your cyber liability insurance and what's covered, what's not covered. Because a lot of the time the coverage can be prevented from having good tools and technology and good practices in place, and the stuff that you actually need coverage on you don't have. So 76% of breaches in 2017 were financially motivated. These are stats just taken off of the last Verizon breach report. The average time for discovery of a breach is about 90 days. Friedman is part of an affiliation called DFK, where it's a bunch of partnering, non-competing accounting firms, and they have conferences all over the place. So the second largest member of this firm was actually breached, and they were in the systems for 9 months before they realized that they had all of their records. The way that they realized this was a bunch of fraudulent tax returns went out for big companies, some of their biggest clients, and they in turn ended up losing them, and the managing partners had to deal with that issue for a couple months. But that's one example of that breaches if you don't have the right things in place, and sometimes when you do, somebody could be sitting there, they could be sitting on your network and your accounts, and just be kind of listening and waiting for the right opportune time. 81% of breaches leverage some sort of stolen or weak passwords. I think this is probably a good time. I want to demo the tool that we've kind of built here. So I'm sure many of you that I've chatted with already are pretty savvy. So you have the Have I Been Pwned site. What this does is basically it makes it so that you can search for either your account or your email address, and you can see what breaches you've been involved in. So I'm going to just take a look. My wife is a perfect example right here. Use her Gmail. So this is run by Troy Hunt, he's a security researcher for Microsoft. He essentially is one of the trusted kind of go-to sources. He's very revered in the cybersecurity industry, and he's basically built this platform. He collects a lot of these data breaches. So you can see Adobe was breached, Dub Smash, I don't even know what that is. My wife signs up for everything. Outlook, you got House, she's always on House. We got LinkedIn, she has MyFitnessPal app was hacked. MyHeritage. I mean, she's like the best example because this lights up. It's kind of weak when you type in somebody's stuff. It's like, okay, you haven't been involved in any breaches, but you probably just haven't had your information out there that long, or it's a new account. So there's a bunch of different things here. So these are all the breaches that are known, right? There's a bunch of different other ones that happen that never makes it to Troy Hunt's database. So chances are, he has a good kind of breadth of the scopes for a lot of the bigger hacks. But that doesn't mean that your information is not out there. So one of the things that we do, does anyone want to check their email address right now? I got some webcam covers I can pass out. Anyone want to do it?
Come on, Hannah.
Sure. Michael, MICHAEL, AND, HANNA1 at Comcast.net. Very creative name. My husband came up with that. Uh-oh.
So you have MyFitnessPal, Modo, Ticketfly, Zomato. So this website will actually give you some insight too into how big the breaches are, how many people were involved, what compromised data they have. So they have email addresses, passwords, usernames. So that's all the more important to use two-factor authentication, as well as changing your passwords on a regular basis. So some of these ones have date of birth, email address, genders, geographic locations. It's always funny when you see somebody in the Ashley Madison breach. That's one of the ones where you kind of root
Oh
for the
my
bad guys. We've seen that before.
So when it says that your password, that your account name has been breached at one of these sites.
Yep.
That site has been breached, but that doesn't necessarily give them your password for your Gmail address.
No, so it's human nature for people to recycle passwords. That doesn't mean, a lot of these hacks have happened in the past, and sometimes they realize them after the fact. So a lot of times the passwords are invalid. So for that, you're exactly correct, because it's not going to necessarily give them to your Gmail drive. But what attackers can do, there's this thing called brute forcing. So you have a couple different applications that you can use in these hacker toolkits, where they essentially take your password and your email address, and they'll do some variations on it. So they figure, if it's 2017, it'll go to 2018, it'll throw an exclamation point on it, throw a couple special characters, and it'll run through this in automated fashion, and be able to kind of ping against that and see what if the password is any kind of variation that's close to that, and there's different rule sets that you could apply and different things that you can do from that front to be, the attacker's only as limited as their creativity. If they want to try and get other stuff, and they have a good basis point of one of your passwords. So we've developed a platform in-house. So I just did Aon.com just to test it out. So Aon, just random big company. You can see we've done a lot of breach research. We've collected many of these different databases. The Have I Been Pwned site is great to know what breaches you've been involved in, but it's not great to know what your password was in there. So we've collected these through kind of scouring the dark web and stuff like that. So you can see a bunch of different older information. Aon knows about all this stuff too. So you can see for the company, these are people that have been breached using their different credentials. I'm actually going to do Freeman, because I know we changed all of them. So Freeman, LLP, I'll show you our dirty laundry. So these are all of the different users that have done, that have been involved in the breaches that we have a collection of right now. So it's a good amount. You in there, Chuck?
I didn't see it. You guys tricked me the other day.
Yeah.
I fell for one.
Oh, you clicked it?
Yeah.
So we do spear phishing simulations for Freeman on a regular basis. But
You got me where it hurt, because he was talking about, a fee coming in.
yeah, fee coming in, right? Those are always the best ones, the highest click. The fee one, the bonuses.xls, that's the best one, where it's like a bonuses spreadsheet for the company, compensation. Those click rates always go really high. So anyone want to test it in? I'll use my wife as another example. So my wife is a Penn Stater. You can see her Penn State account was compromised in one of these breaches, as well as her Gmail account. So she's changed her password since then. I'm sure it's got a capital K now. Anyone else want to see? I mean, you could.
So this is a site that you don't. If we went to that site, you don't need to use
it's
password account.
Yeah, so this is just our kind of proprietary stuff. I have it unblocked right now, so we could use it here for this IP address.
But we would not be able to access.
We couldn't use it.
No, this is our stuff. But you could reach out to me. I'm happy if you have any ex-girlfriends or anything like that. You want their password. There's some banks. You want to add some digits to your account. You can see me offline. But yeah, if anyone wants to use it, I got some
Here, you can use it. You can put CRR26
CRR26
at hotmail.com.
I'll just see.
Old school.
So
Safe.
you're not from the Hotmail one, but somebody's password is poop2000.
It's not mine. I didn't do it.
That's funny. It's a Cornell thing. But yeah, you see some funny stuff when you start digging into people's passwords. We've done that for Friedman. We were able to crack a bunch of different passwords, and we got like partners that are high up in the firm. Work sucks. And a bunch of inappropriate ones that it's like you would want to sit down with HR and have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, people I think have that assumption in their minds that no one will ever know their password, right?
Exactly.
Sadly.
Until they know your password.
Until it's
But does anyone else want to take a try? Any look up your organizations, any prospects or anything? All right, fair
Yeah,
enough.
you can do me.
Okay.
Chris at hrcomputes.com.
The CH?
KRIS
KRIS?
at hrcomputes.com.
Does that look like something?
Not a current password.
Not correct. Yeah, a lot of these they're like one single point in time, so that's
I
just.
can't remember that password, so it's a while ago.
Yeah.
Is since 2009. That's 10 years.
Yeah, 2009, that's probably when it's from. But yeah, it's kind of funny when you start looking at this stuff.
Is there any technology that would allow us to use, like when I log into my laptop from afar and I have the key fob and I gotta wait for the double dictation of the number,
Yep.
it comes up and I got not enough time to type it in and I have to wait for the next one to come up.
Yep.
Is there any way, or any technology that's coming, that would use a similar key fob when we want to use that as a password going forward?
Yeah, so they have a bunch of different technology, and they all have their different nuances, like when it comes to like expiration and things like that. So they have the YubiKeys, which Okta is another platform that we utilize for authentication and centralized logins.
Yeah, there's some that do like a push where
Yeah, so if anyone wants me to check for their passwords or anything, feel free to send me an email after this, and I'm happy to look that up for you. Just let me know what the passwords are. So this is another snippet from the last Verizon breach report. What I want to point out here is up here we have organized crime. So the top external actors for different breaches, it's organized crime units. So they're companies that are literally worth millions and millions of dollars that all they do is just sit overseas and they have basically call centers and they try and scam people, they try and click them in. They have different levels where somebody's just trying to get you to click on something, or they're calling you up saying, you know, Microsoft, or this is Apple, you know, your refrigerator's running, I need you to do this. And a lot of the time they prey on like elderly homes and that sort of thing, but it's more of like a spray and pray. For them, organized crime is huge. So people don't realize that it's not just the 14-year-old in their parents' basement. You know, there's actual crime units that are just going around sweeping for different businesses. We're dealing with a real problem in New York. So Friedman has a lot of real estate clients, and real estate is one of the most profitable, it's one of the best assets to own, and they're targeted very, very heavily. So we've dealt with a couple small ones where it's only about 15 employees or so, where they have a couple $1 million in holdings, but their website says, you know, you're real estate on it. So they're being bombarded with these different phishing attacks and these attempts. And we actually had one client, I'm not going to say any names, but they were a Friedman client for a long time. Their CEO was sitting at his desk and he saw something that looked like a wire transfer pop up and then it disappeared. He's like, what the hell? And he's like, I didn't send anything out. So he goes into his deleted box and he sees it disappear again. And he's like, that's weird. So he checks his statements and he realized that there are fraudulent wire transfers coming out from his email address. So he clicked on something or somebody got into his accounts and they were able to see how he was doing business, how the money was flowing within the organization. And what they did is they took the actual wire transfer that he sent out to the bank and they went through JP Morgan and they were sending out wire transfers with his actual signature on it that they doctored up to their bank accounts. And it was for roughly $19,500, and this was over a course of a couple of days that was happening. So if you ever have any kind of fraudulent wire transfers that go out, I'll link a site at the end. There's a good chance you can kind of freeze that and get the money back if it's within 72 hours. A lot of these were outside of the 72-hour window, so they weren't able to get their funds back. But it was a good learning lesson because the people came in and within minutes they set up forwarding rules so that all of the emails went to an external account. They were able to have everything doctored up so they had these things and they knew exactly the amount to do that wouldn't require a verbal confirmation. So if you would have said $20,000, they would have picked up the phone and said, hey, we're going to confirm that this $20,000 wire, and, you know, the show would have been over. They would have been caught. So these units, they know how to do it, they know how to go for the low-hanging fruit, and they're profiting heavily from this. So what do they want? Money is always good. We've talked about that. That's a pretty obvious one.
I just had a question.
Yep.
I've seen phishing emails come across
Yep.
that say that that you're being ransomed,
Yep.
but you're not being ransomed.
Yep.
So I just wondered if
It's just pure social engineering at that point. You know, there's a ton of them that where they go for like, okay, there's a big one that say that they caught people masturbating on their webcam, and then they would do that. And we've actually had people call up and say, hey, they caught me doing something inappropriate. We had one who's a director of the school and he was worried about somebody. Like, dude, it's a big scam. You could Google it. It's everywhere. You know, so he basically was like, I'm not touching your computer, but that's just typical social engineering. Whether it's the phone call or it's the people saying that they're your boss who's on the website and you need $2,000 worth of Amazon gift cards sent to them right now. You know, we've had plenty of those happen at Friedman. We see them all the time. Those are kind of low-hanging fruit. The best way to really defend against that, like when you're thinking about from an organization standpoint, don't click on anything. Just assume everybody that you haven't initiated contact with is some sort of scam. They want you to do something, right? So if they're asking you to do something, just take a lazy approach. Like, I have HR yell at me all the time because they'll send me a PDF and like, I need you to sign this or you need to update this. I don't click on anything until they're at my desk telling me, okay, you're the last one that hasn't done this. You need to take care of it. So just be lazy. So for money for ransomware, this is something that still is an issue nowadays. The best way to really defend against ransomware is one, educate your users. Like I said, make sure that they're not clicking on stuff. Majority of the ransomware that comes in is through email. There's all different kinds of variants that are changing. Using a next-gen antivirus solution will actually go a long way. Because it's not like your dad's Norton antivirus, like who's this guy Norton and why is he scanning my computer for viruses? It's something that looks at, Norton is, or the old school antivirus is more signature based, so it would have to know that something is bad to find the signature. The way attacks are happening nowadays, people get the source code and they change the signatures by changing a couple lines in the code and make it look totally different, as it totally bypasses traditional antivirus solutions. So you want something that's heuristic based, you want something that's going to look at the nuances of what it's doing. Is it trying to dump passwords from memory? Is it doing something that Sally from Sally the receptionist doesn't normally do or shouldn't be doing? And that'll flag that stuff and it'll block it from executing. They also want personal information, so PII, PHI, whether it's healthcare information, that's literally worth its weight in gold. You can see there's a little snippet from Experian here. This one's a little outdated. I'm pretty sure they're a little bit cheaper now because there's been so many breaches since they released this. But you can see you can buy social security numbers for about $1. You can buy bulk lists for a couple bucks for different people's stuff to try and do fraudulent things. Online payment services, you have driver licenses, so fake licenses are about 20 bucks. Fake diplomas, fake passports, or real stolen passports, all sorts of different stuff that you could buy on the dark web. So there's a huge market for it. You know, people are always buying drugs and other things on the dark web, as well as sharing different hacking information. You can buy credentials, that's another big one. So there are people that just go and they do these spear phishing campaigns. They know how to set up a spear phishing campaign. They'll get a bunch of credentials and then they'll sell it on the dark web because they don't want to commit the crime or they just want to make a quick buck. We have proprietary information, so any kind of source code, we've seen that where so we were doing a penetration test for a company. And they're one of the smart thermostat manufacturers, and we were able to go in and get some of their source code. They had this little computer which is called a Raspberry Pi. It's like a $40 computer. You can plug it in and you can remote into it. So one of their developers plugged this in without them knowing, and he was doing his work from his Raspberry Pi. I thought it was all cool. But he forgot to change the default password, and we were able to just go in and pop that and type in history on the command line, and we saw him connect to the commercial database that had all of their code repositories that every developer was working off of. So proprietary information is definitely something. If there's somebody had their secret sauces, you definitely want to try and prevent somebody from getting that stuff. And then resources. So my dad is like, okay, so I got nothing on my computer. What's the big deal? I don't care, but you have a computer, it's still processing power. People are building these botnets where they're doing these distributed denial of service attacks where they send out, they infect these different computers and they're able to kind of control them when they need. And when they want to take somebody offline, they'll call in thousands of computers to take it offline. It's one of the biggest things. We don't really see it too much in like enterprise or really in like business, but we see it at schools all the time. Now kids are taking their tests online, they're using like their Chromebooks or laptops or whatever. When kids have a big test and they want to buy some more time, they can just go on the dark web and they can order a denial of service attack and take their school systems offline. So that's something that schools are dealing with on a regular basis. I wish I had that as an option to purchase that. I had to build the botnets myself when I was in high school. But so we talked about denial of service. That's essentially taking somebody offline. There's monetary value there, especially if you're going after a competitor or something like that. We have brute forcing where people will try and brute force passwords. They'll find a login page. They'll know your username, and they'll try a bunch of different passwords and variations there and try and get in. We have man in the middle. That's sort of like these different attacks where say you're at a coffee shop, you're at Starbucks, there's public Wi-Fi, somebody's doing some nefarious stuff on that. They'll try and do a man in the middle attack where they can see your broadcast traffic being on that network and try and interject and try and steal banking information or whatever, pass the hash or anything else that they can get into your systems. We have database injection, so I'm trying not to be too technical here, but in layman's terms, that's a way of injecting code if database isn't set up right. People can interact with it, they can do different queries, and they can inject malicious stuff. They can inject users, they can exfiltrate things such as password hashes and try and crack those. It's big, we see it a lot on different websites. Ransomware we talked about, that's very straightforward. Remote code execution is one of the biggest ones. It's one of the most critical vulnerabilities. So when my team's doing penetration tests and they find a remote code execution vulnerability, they fire off these vulnerability scanners at the beginning and they see what stuff is out there. When they find remote code execution, they know that there's a good chance that they can get in, they can exploit that, because you're able to take from computer A, where you're sitting on, to computer B, whether it be a server or something that has some sort of special information on it. You're able to inject and execute code as if you're a power user on that. And you can sometimes create a new user, log into that system directly, and then pivot across the network. Or driving, that's kind of an old school thing where people used to drive around with different antennas and do all sorts of nefarious things for wireless. Me and my friends used to play pranks because they enforce it now, but everybody used to have their wireless routers with the default passwords, so we'd log in and make fun of our roommates by changing their wireless to something else that's making fun of them, always inappropriate things. Keyloggers, you could pick up a keylogger off Amazon for like $35, where you essentially plug it in and then you plug a keyboard into it. It operates as a keyboard, but it monitors all the keystrokes. These are good if you want to spy on somebody, but it goes down to physical access. That's a risk. So if somebody walks into your building and plugs in a keylogger, comes back a couple of days, dressed as a janitor, picks it up, they'll have access to everything. So, your usernames, passwords, everything that you typed. It's always a fun exercise to do to see what people are typing. But malware, there's such a huge range of malware. Ransomware. There's credential harvesters where they can set up, essentially, they can monitor for credentials. They can make it look like a site, but malware, it's definitely an epidemic. It changes all the time. There's ones that steal banking information. It's literally just limited to the creativity of the attacker.
The keylogging you're talking about is a physical device.
It's a physical device.
Because you can do keylogging from software-based, and there are things that can protect against that.
Absolutely. So next generation AV, that kind of makes it really challenging to do, unless there's some sort of active exploit that could bypass that. But yeah, software keylogging is a lot harder to do than plugging in a device. But they do exist. So on the left here, we have a screenshot from a hacking tool called Metasploit. So you can see it gives you a little ASCII art of a ninja. But they have software keyloggers. They also have reverse shells on that, so you can basically set up a listener on your computer, execute a command from somebody else's computer, and then that gives you access into their back end. It's all command line, and it doesn't look as exciting, but when you're able to pivot and then take screen captures from people's webcams and a desktop, it has all those tools preloaded, so anybody can kind of come in and use that. Security professionals use the tool all the time, as well as a bunch of 14-year-olds can go on YouTube, watch a couple of videos, and figure out some things that are kind of point and click if you find the right vulnerabilities. We have technical flaws, so there's a lot of IoT devices that we mentioned where it's just a race out to market, smart thermostats, all different devices where it's essentially just security is an afterthought. And then we have social engineering where we essentially let them in. So this was taken from a snippet. Tripwire did a study on recent breaches. So for big organizations, patching is a huge problem. I deal with it all the time, and I curse myself when I have to get some work done, and then I have to restart my computer for updates. I know it's an extreme inconvenience for a lot of people at the time, but install the patches. A lot of those patches are revolving around security updates and preventing exploits from happening. But this is a huge way that organizations are getting breached on a regular basis, is not having updated stuff. And the city of Baltimore was a prime example of that, where they were able to basically circumvent some of the stuff by not having updated systems and take them offline. So what can somebody do if they have a little bit of technical skill? I'm just going to show a video that kind of outlines this.
I asked Dan Tentler, a well-known security researcher, to turn all of his firepower on me.
I did get into quite a number of things that I found.
So what were the first things you did? How did you start hacking me?
I quickly found your Squarespace blog and had an idea. Basically what I did was created a bogus Squarespace site and sent an email to you, a fish asking you to go to this website, run the certificate installer.
And I did it, because I'm an idiot.
So once you ran that, it gave me access to your computer, and I created several fake pop-ups that looked like system pop-ups that would ask you for your credentials.
You didn't even have to have my passwords.
No, you gave them to me.
I gave them to you.
Yeah. So I stole your 1Password keychain.
And 1Password is where I store all my other passwords. So effectively by...
And your social security number and your Amex stuff and all your stock trading and bank information. I can send email to everyone in this room as you. I am you right now, if I wanted to be. If my evilness is working correctly, it should actually be taking pictures of your desktop and pictures through your webcam every 2 minutes. And I have been watching you for about 2 days now. In coffee shops, at your mom's house, on a plane. Here's your editing stuff, there's your...
Oh my god, so this is literally...
Every 2 minutes.
Through my webcam.
Yeah, through this guy.
How badly could you have messed up my life?
I could have made you homeless. I could have made you homeless and penniless.
How? How would you make me homeless?
Like, I have control of your digital life in its entirety. I have all your credentials, I have all your access to all your financial information, all your work information, all your personal information. I can pay people with your bank account or your Amex account. I am you. I can fully impersonate. Like, the only thing I couldn't doctor would be like your fingerprints.
This is like as bad as it gets.
It's ridiculous, yeah, it's bad.
So it turns out that Dan Tentler is very good at his job. I mean,
Okay, so that's a good segue. We've got some webcam covers coming out for everybody. If you already have one, pass them out to your friends. It's always a good idea to have those. I used to play pranks on my friends in high school where there was this backdoor called NetDevil, and you basically say, hey, take a look at this picture of kittens. They click on it and open a backdoor.
Can we get a copy of that video? Because
Absolutely.
I really want to scare my daughter.
Yeah, perfect.
I have a great story. This is yesterday. She calls up my wife. No, didn't call my wife because she doesn't call. She texts my wife and says, "Hey, can you text me the Netflix password?" My wife was brilliant. She's great. She says, "Absolutely not. We don't text any of that information." No, you know, she was great. My daughter texts back, "Oh God, nothing's gonna happen."
Yep.
No, I just can't wait to
Yes, get her
scare
crap out of
her.
her.
She doesn't listen to me. I'm her dad, you know.
Yeah,
so-
exactly. Send her a webcam cover too.
Yeah.
So the anatomy of an attack. I'm not going to go too much into the technical because that's stuff I don't want to put anyone to sleep. But take a look at the far left. You have the whole research portion over there. So what somebody will do is they will, if they want to hack somebody and they have some malicious intent, what they'll do is they'll kind of do a fingerprinting of their whole entire network. So they'll look at different personnel, different profiles on social media. They'll see what information they can gather. They'll combine that with the breach status stuff that I was showing you. A lot of the times they can find answers to a lot of the commonly asked questions to reset accounts. We were doing a penetration test where this company, they were building basically a real estate platform, but they had some good guys that were doing it. They coded it great. We found no vulnerabilities. They had web application firewalls, invested a lot in the hardware, and we couldn't find any vulnerabilities. It was all brand new software. Nothing was out of date. We couldn't do anything, but we found the person through open source intelligence. We found who registered the website. We found out his Gmail address from that because there are these different directories where you could, it's called the Whois lookup, where you can find the records of who registers websites. We got his email. We found, we got in to reset his account, and it was asking us for a bunch of different questions. One of it was like his high school. His high school was posted on his Facebook. It wasn't his Facebook. It was posted on his LinkedIn, but his Facebook was totally private. He had it locked down, which is a good thing. We found his wife on Facebook. And we were able to go onto her site, her page on Facebook, which wasn't locked down at all. And we found a picture with her and the dog named Fred. So we were able to take that, reset his account, go in, and then we had full admin access to the dashboard and we got into the system. So open source intelligence and reconnaissance is something that's good. That's definitely, it can play a very, very critical part in keeping your exposure down. It's one of the first things that somebody will do. So just be careful what you do, utilize private settings, don't trust anybody. There's people that look real online that will sometimes add you. There's a lot of like hot women that add me all the time, like you're not a real person. People will do that just to get access to your network and the information that they're trying to target you. Let's talk about social engineering. So spear phishing is something that everybody's dealing with. There's all different types of spear phishing. So there's spear phishing, which is more targeted. There's phishing where they're blasting out a couple, 100,000 different emails in these big lists saying you want a cruise or you want an iPad or something, trying to get people to click. They're very, very spray and pray. Then you have whaling, which is going after somebody like a CEO or a CFO or a CIO that would have access to certain critical information. We have phone porting, which is a big one. There was a big lawsuit that went down with Verizon recently. It looks like they're going to lose, where somebody's phone was ported. They were able to bypass the two-factor authentication that he used for his crypto account and stole a couple $1 million worth of crypto. And they just basically called Verizon and fooled them into thinking that they were that person, and they had some of his information. They were able to do that without having to do anything technical. There's website cloning, that's something easy. There's a bunch of different tools that do that online where you can basically clone a website within seconds, and you can change the login information to be your server where you save the username and password. So you send somebody a spear phishing email, it looks like a legitimate site, somebody clicks on it. The biggest one is Amazon. So Amazon packages arrive, please log in to do it, and that's how people are compromising Amazon accounts. Tailgating is a big one for physical security. People hanging out smoking by the back door, looking like they belong and just walking in and installing keyloggers. And then you have posing as somebody else, and that could be the ones where it's like India calling you saying it's Microsoft and your certificate's out. It's a different Apple store, so posing as somebody else is definitely, it still catches people off guard. So spear phishing and social engineering, it takes advantage of fear, obedience, greed, and helpfulness. People are naturally helpful. They want to help their coworkers. A lot of the time, these spear phishing emails will go after somebody's fear of not getting something done, saying they're a manager or saying they're the CFO and they need this check sent out. There's obedience. People are normally obedient, and then greed, where they try and offer you something or try and get you to click on something through a benefit to yourself. So I just have another quick video here, and then we'll wrap things up.
So I invited a few of the world's best hackers to try to hack me and show me where my vulnerabilities are. And now I'm going to meet them in Las Vegas for DEF CON, the biggest hacker convention of the year.
They're going to hack me using social engineering, which is essentially hacking without any code. They just use a phone and an internet connection.
You want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Who are you going to call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider and
Okay.
see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
I'm going to spoof from your number, so it's going to look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today. So I'm so sorry, I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for uses information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
At gmail.com?
Jessica gets access to my personal email address.
Now, if I needed to add our older daughter on our account so she could call in and make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got married, he added me to the account.
Jess uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my password.
Thank you so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. All right, thank you.
Holy shit.
So that's one example of how that can be done. You can call from a computer where you can spoof your number. There's a bunch of different software that you could do. It's actually really, really cheap. There's services where you can spin it up so you don't even have to configure anything. They'll do it for you. So you can spoof. You call up the phone company. You could call Chuck and say that you're somebody else. You say you're Kim calling. You can spoof the number. Do your best Kim impression. Try and get Chuck to send some money out. That's just always that social engineering leverages different tools and tries to fool people into doing something. This is an example of a website cloner. So the left side is the actual Chase login. The right side is, you can see it's red. We didn't add a cert, but you could add a cert to make it look a little bit more legit. But we cloned this website in about 10 seconds. It took from start to finish. That's when we would have the credentials where they type in the username and password right there. This is not as much of a big deal anymore for like banking stuff because banks have made really big progress the past couple of years in terms of using different heuristics on the back end to identify user profiles. That's one of the powers of having so much data that you can do correlations so that you can tell if you ever go out and travel and your credit card's been locked out or your card's been locked out because you didn't notify them you were traveling. Those are heuristics that are in place where they have a baseline sample of your user's behavior and they're able to kind of tailor that there. So banking isn't so much anymore because chances are if somebody's logging in from China into your bank account, they're going to get blocked and they're not going to be able to do that unless they try and port your phone or something like that. That's just one thing but you could use this tool in a more creative way to make it look like a different site, a different company's site, and do malicious things and try and trick people into thinking it's a legitimate site by pairing this with a spear phishing attack. So as we're wrapping stuff up, mitigations for businesses, backup. If you're a smaller company, make sure that you partner with somebody else who does this. Backup services are very cost effective. And it's a very, very great means to make sure that if you get locked out of your data or somebody deletes your data, you'll have it. And it's just good for overall business continuity. Lock down your perimeter. If you do this, you're going to eliminate a lot of potential attacks from spear phishing. So apply some sort of two-factor authentication to your VPNs. So how you're connecting to your network, how you're delivering mail, so webmail or Office 365, which is a big one where it's cloud-based. Have two-factor on that for your organization. Make sure that your organization utilizes that, just so you can give somebody your password, but they'd have to have that second factor to get in, as well as your website. So we have a lot of marketing sites that we see defaced all the time, where they're using something like WordPress, which is a content management system. They spear phish for that, and they get in and try and deface it, but that's lower impact. Security awareness training. So there are plenty of companies that do this. There's software. KnowBe4 is an example. It's the software that we use. It's like $20 to $30 a user for the company for the year, and they provide you all sorts of training modules that are tailored to different industries, as well as giving you the option to do the spear phishing simulations that Chuck was talking about a little while ago. We taught him. They update them constantly, so it's a really great platform for a really inexpensive cost. Vulnerability management programs, so new vulnerabilities are coming out on a weekly basis. You want to make sure that your organization, your IT, your third-party IT, whoever it be in charge is doing some sort of vulnerability scanning and making sure that they're getting everything that they can. Malware detection, make sure that you're using something that's next generation, that provides the heuristic-based model, not the signature-based model. There's a lot of advanced dashboards now where companies will actually do this for you. Cyzen does it, as well as many others, where they'll monitor the dashboards, they'll deploy the software, so you don't have to worry about having eyes on glass, looking at these panes, looking for alerts, and it'll block a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in terms of like the vanilla ransomware and things like that, and it'll stop those from deploying. Use secure configurations. The IT should have this. You should be using baselines for different laptops and computers that they deploy. Right to audit. So third-party risk is a huge issue right now going on for companies. You can have a right to audit. A lot of companies are using SOC reports to show that they're thinking about cybersecurity. If you're gonna trust any third party with critical data for your business, make sure that you get this written into the agreement that you have a right to audit, and you can ask for certain information that shows that they're diligent in protecting your information, because you're responsible for your data at the end of the day. And then insurance for risk outside of your control, and then always having an incident response plan. And then for a personal side, so mind your authentication, multi-factor authentication, two-factor, whatever you want to call it. using something like a LastPass or 1Password, there's a million free versions out there. It's so much better than writing your password under your keyboard or having to forget password every time. They have plugins for your browser, so they make it super easy for you to access and log in. A lot of the time it's a lot easier than typing in your password. You want to monitor your alerts and accounts. They've made this so much better. I know most banks now are doing like the free credit reports that you can check anytime. They'll tell you when new inquiries come out for your credit, and you'll have insight into that. So check those on a regular basis just to make sure nobody has your information or trying to do a fraudulent account. You can freeze your accounts if you don't plan on taking out a mortgage or a car or anything. But usually that's more cumbersome, especially when you want to get something using your credit. So it's just better to keep an eye on it and just know what's out there. When traveling, use encryption. So if you have a VPN, NordVPN is a very popular choice, as well as if you have a company VPN, a lot of the time provided by your company. If you're sitting at Starbucks and you have to do anything critical other than watching a movie, make sure that you do dial into the VPN first and make sure that that'll create a tunnel so that if somebody's sitting on the network sniffing traffic, that you'll at least have encryption and it won't mean anything to them. Be paranoid, trust nobody. If somebody's asking you to do something, always question it. Always be mindful that there are scammers everywhere. And your company might be doing spear phishing simulations too. Be careful what you post on social media. Any kind of information that can be used to reset accounts, especially that stuff is plentiful online, especially social media. People are getting a lot better about that, as well as companies, but there's still a bunch that use that. I mean, for my 401k plan that we have through Friedman, they have a bunch of questions that they ask, but those are stuff there. It's information that wouldn't be too hard if somebody really wanted to look under the hood and try and reset. And know where your data is. One good example of this is the iCloud. When all the celebrities were having their nude photos leaked, they didn't realize that the iCloud was uploading it and their data was actually sitting in the cloud. And people would compromise their accounts through spear phishing, whether it's their assistant or whatever, and they were getting into that and they were seeing all sorts of stuff. So know where your data is, make sure that you have a good idea for anything critical and you use the proper backups.
And just in case, if you decide to go to a security conference or a hacker conference and you see Jake, turn your phone off, turn your computer off. Don't get.
We do DEF CON every year, and DEF CON is one of the biggest hacker conferences in Vegas, and it's just a bunch of cowboys out there. The last time we went, they were taking over the cell phone services, so we were creating rogue cell phone to try and mess with people's cell phone service. I just bought a burner laptop, so Best Buy has a 15-day return policy. I bought a Surface so I could take notes on that, and I didn't load anything personal, didn't log into anything on that, and I just came back and returned it when I was done. Pro hacks. Yep. So, any questions?
External password managers as compared to the password manager built into Chrome.
Yep.
What are your comments on that, especially if you have two-factor authentication set up on your Google account?
Yeah,
so
that's great. Google does a great job there. They have amazing security researchers. The stuff to remember passwords are great. If somebody wants to see those passwords, they're going to have to access your information knowing your password. So if you go to your settings to see your password, it's going to prompt you to type it. So that's another way to manage that. Using Chrome, I've done that in the past, and it's a good solution as well.
So you're comfortable with doing that as compared to requiring an external password
manager?
manager?
Yeah, absolutely. External password managers are great if you have shared things between different teams, or your wife has a password, or you have a bunch of different logins that you want to share. External password managers are a great solution for sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Thank you very much, everybody.